On March 9, 2011, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake shook the eastern coast of Japan. For a country highly engineered to withstand frequent tremors, this was a routine event. Buildings swayed, residents paused briefly, and daily life quickly returned to normal. 2 days later, at 2:45 p.m. on March 11th, Japan's earthquake early warning system lit up. Over 1,000 seismometers detected incoming P waves. In seconds, automated fail-safes kicked in. High-speed trains braked to a halt, and factories shut down their machinery. Exactly 1 minute later, a 9.1 magnitude megathrust earthquake fractured the seafloor. Striking at a relatively shallow depth of just 18 miles, the violent shaking immediately radiated out toward the coast. The force of the rupture was planetary in scale. The tremor physically displaced Japan's main island by nearly 8 feet. The impact was so severe, it knocked the Earth 7 inches off its axis, causing the planet to wobble for 6 continuous minutes. Across the country, the violent shaking caused immediate industrial damage. Oil refineries caught fire and burned uncontrollably, turning the skyline black with smoke and ash. Yet through it all, Japan's modern high-rises held strong. They swayed violently, but remained standing. With major cities surviving the initial shaking, millions of residents believed they had weathered the worst. They were unaware that the massive displacement of the seabed was already pushing a second, far more lethal disaster toward their shores. Minutes after the shaking stopped, the ocean began to behave unnaturally. Water rapidly drained away from the coastline, exposing the bare, muddy seabed. The ocean was gathering mass to form a solid wall of water. The deep, V-shaped bays of Japan's Sanriku coast compressed the rising ocean, amplifying its destructive power. In Miyako City, the surge climbed to 131 feet high, scaling far above a standard 10-story building. Japan spent decades building massive concrete seawalls to protect these exact coastal towns from past disasters, but those defenses were completely overwhelmed. The sheer volume of the dark, powerful surge overflowed the concrete boundaries and instantly engulfed the streets below. Structural fail-safes are built to withstand the recorded limits of past disasters. When nature generates a force that completely shatters those expected limits, the defenses become entirely useless. The water swept inland across a 420-mile stretch of Japan's eastern coast. Massive whitecaps crashed through tree lines, reducing neighborhoods to rubble and crushing homes like tin cans. At the Noru school, students and teachers had just survived the severe ground tremors. Believing the danger had passed, staff calmly began checking classrooms and moving everyone toward the gymnasium to safely wait out any aftershocks. Suddenly, a man ran inside, shouting that a wall of water was approaching. The threat became reality as the surge smashed through the walls. Teachers and locals scrambled, physically pulling children from the rushing water over railings to temporary safety. 30 minutes later, the floodwaters finally began to retreat. But this receding current moved with the same violent force as the initial strike, dragging vehicles, debris, and collapsed structures directly back into the Pacific Ocean. The true scale of the tsunami was revealed when the water finally cleared. It left behind an apocalyptic field of splintered wood and obliterated towns. By the end of the day, more than 18,000 people were left dead or missing. The crisis then entered a third phase at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. When the earthquake knocked out the facility's main power supply, the plant switched to its emergency diesel generators to keep the reactor cores cooled. A 49-foot tsunami wave completely overtopped the plant's 19-foot seawall, flooding the basement and drowning the electrical systems. The submerged generators died, cooling systems stopped completely, and the water keeping the reactor stable rapidly boiled away. Extreme heat buildup triggered massive hydrogen explosions that tore the roofs off the reactor buildings. This satellite image reveals explicit damage to the containment units, which began releasing radioactive gases, causing radiation levels to spike 1,000 times the normal limit. What began as a shift in tectonic plates deep beneath the ocean had cascaded through the failing infrastructure into a terrifying, man-made technological disaster. The Japanese government immediately ordered rapid evacuations. As the active radiation zone expanded, hundreds of thousands of people were forced to abandon their homes and crowd into makeshift emergency shelters. With the plant on the verge of a full meltdown, a small group of engineers and operators, later known as the Fukushima 50, refused to leave. They stayed behind in highly radioactive conditions, acting as the final human failsafe. Working in total darkness, they systematically and manually vented the massive pressure from the failing reactors, sacrificing their own safety to prevent a total global catastrophe. The compounding disasters left permanent scars on the nation. The financial toll reached $235 billion, and the radioactive fallout rendered vast areas around the plant uninhabitable for generations. Japan has since rebuilt, but the exclusion zones and the thousands of missing residents remain. It stands as a physical record of the moment the world's most advanced defenses were met by a force they were never designed to contain.